Greetings, my friends. Mike Wan here. Gregorian calendar date, June the 10th, Gregorian calendar year 2024. Welcome. I got a lot to share with you guys today. This should be fun. It's gonna be a little bit different than other videos. I'm filming this from now where I'm staying, which has no internet access, no phone service. I have to drive like maybe 15-20 minutes to do so. What that means is, like, these videos, which you're probably familiar with, they have a lot of slides, a lot of visuals that come along with it, and that implies internet access. And so don't really have it. Like, I can go, normally what I'd also do is I'd go to libraries where I'd get free internet access, or go to cafes, and I don't really have that many options. So that being said, this is going to be more of a spoken word video as opposed to the slides, which maybe you've come accustomed to. I do have a couple in here. Don't worry, I do have some visuals, but still. So let us begin. We've got, I think, about 4 or 5 different stories which I want to share to bring you guys up to speed with. So the first one is I'm going to begin with a video. Actually, 2 videos. So about 2 years ago, I shared this video, and this is when I was living in Nome countryside in southern Lancaster County. And the reason why this video was interesting, it was like, I just set up a camera one day. This was a spot I used to like to sit and just, do the sort of work which I do. And I wanted to film it for some reason. I had the impetus to do that one day, film myself. So the video shows me here, I go and I sit, and then these 2 orbs appear, and it was just kind of like, it was a fun video. And it got I got a lot of feedback from people, like, oh my goodness, what is this, orbs, spirits, what have you. The truth of the matter, I mean, at least what I always took this as, is these were probably just lens flares. They were somehow the light of the sun captured the camera in such a way that these lens flares occurred. But that's not why I showed the video. Like, regardless if it was an orb or whatever it may have been, the timing of when they showed up was what was so significant, in my opinion. So what I was doing was, I was standing here, probably like in some contemplative thought, and I go and I sit down, and right here I've got, like, my notebook and maybe a pen and paper and so forth, and I'm just sitting there, and you're watching me, and then all of a sudden, like right here, let's go catch it. At that moment, I'm a minute and a half into this video. I mean, I truncated this video from a longer video, but a minute and a half into it, for whatever reason, whatever was going on inside of me, I was like, now's the time I'm going to pick up my notebook. Now I feel the time to write down whatever was going on in my head at that time. And it was at that moment that this orb appeared. So let's go look at that. Like, it's like the timing of it, like whether it's a sun flare or not, like whatever caused the sun flare, like the timing of it was what was so significant. So I sit there for a while, and you could see I'm just like sitting there. I'm not writing. I have the notebook. I kind of pick it up for a second. So for a moment, I pick up my pen. But I don't actually write anything. Like, I'm still in whatever state of inspiration. And so this continues to go on, and now 2 orbs show up, 2 sun flares, and I'm just thinking, just sitting there, watching the world go by. And right around at this point, so at the 4-minute mark here, you can see they begin to fade out. And so right about at this moment, at 4:24, they both disappear. Still haven't written anything. And then, so it's 4:24. I think it's 4:44. I checked this out before. And then I get the impetus to write. So for me, this orb video, which I shared in the past, like it was visually significant that the orbs / lens flare appears, but that was not really what I thought it was so significant. It was like the timing, like, the timing, and I remember what I wrote down was rather significant. I don't know if I ever shared it, but it was significant to me. So anyway, so what's the point? Why am I bringing this up now? So I've got another orb video to show. So let's go into it. So this past, I guess it was 2 weekends ago. Maybe it was last week. Last weekend, I was at a wedding. I attended a wedding, and it was my friends, mine and Christy's friends. It was actually originally Christy's old college friend, and she got married, and now, I'm friends with them. We're all friends. So I want to show this video, and this is an orb video. Like what I showed before was a sun flare video, which somehow seemingly was connected to something. Now I want you to watch this. It's an 11-second video, and what you're going to do is you're going to see this thing fly across right when they're having their first dance right here, and then it turns and comes straight at the camera. So let's go and watch that. All right. See it? Okay, let's go back. Unfortunately, when I show videos in when it's attached in the program which I use to make these slides, I can't go inch by inch. But we're going to watch the 11 seconds again. We're going to see it come. Actually, all right. I spoke too soon. I forgot that I am able to go second by second. So let's see if we can see this. Can I move that? Yeah. So it comes from the left and it comes straight at the camera. Let's go watch this. So let me clear that out. All right, there we go. So that's the orb video. So why am I sharing this today? Why am I sharing that in my synchromystic storytelling? I'm sharing it because their wedding was a culmination of obviously, like, the lead up of their relationship, but last spring, I think it was last March, so 2023, me and Christy and Emily and Derek, we spent a week together in Venice, Florida. It's a beach town on the Gulf Coast. And when we were there, Christy and I did a starboard ceremony for Emily and Derek. And this is what I want to tell you. And to me, like the orb is the culmination of this tale I'm about to share. So I think it was like the final night or one of the last nights we were there together. We had a really nice time together, and we went to the beach. And at the beach there were there's like public picnic areas where you can have a table and you can cook out, and that's where we set up the starboard. And how we set it up was we did what's known as a synastry chart, which is a two people's natal charts. The configuration of the planets at each of their births. And so that we've got multiple sets of representations of, like, 3 sets of the sun, 3 sets of the moon, and so forth. So we can do multiple charts or configurations on the starboard at a given time. And that's really what the starboard's about. It's a synchrometer. The whole purpose of it is taking people and events and just, like, very ceremoniously and ritualistically, with consciousness and intention, like, just integrating, putting them on the board. We're tightening that weave. So we did Derek's and we did Emily's charts, and we also knew they were not engaged at the time, but it was kind of like an open secret, if you will, that they were going to go get engaged on a very specific date. And the reason why they knew that date for something that was related to the other part of their life where they live and work, they knew that they were going to be in Scotland, and that was like the ideal situation for them to have, or for, an engagement, something very, very memorable. So we knew that date, and so we did that engagement date, and we did their two charts with kind of like the intention of like a blending of all three. That's the logic. That's the logic behind the starboard. And then the fun part, the exciting part, I suppose, is then watching what happens afterwards. And usually what shows up are really strong synchronicities. The whole purpose of the starboard is to further integrate your individual life with life itself. And your entire life is made up of small parts. So when you see the small parts, the small synchronicities becoming more and more frequent, more and more meaningful, more and more like tighter, well, then that's implied that the overall life path is also more tight, more integrated, and so forth. So, okay, so they get engaged. That's where the story gets good. When Derek and Emily when they first started coming together as a couple in their early, like, dating period, one of the things which their relationship was grounded on was a love of traditional Irish music. And Derek was an aficionado. And so they went to Scotland. They flew from Philadelphia, but you don't fly to Scotland, you fly to Ireland, then from Ireland you get to Scotland. And they both live on a Camp Hill community. A Camp Hill community, they're all over the world. They are intentional, biodynamic farming communities based upon Rudolf Steiner philosophies, but they also are villages for adults with mental disabilities. So you have people who run houses and kind of run the farm, and then you have the villagers there who have mental disabilities. And they actually were in Scotland because it was like, I think it was like a Camp Hill conference. And maybe some of you might remember I told a story around Christmas time about Christmas caroling to cows. It was at Derek and Emily's Camp Hill, Kimberton community. So Irish music was a big part of their early courting, if you will. And they go to Scotland and they come back to Ireland. And they're supposed to fly back on, like, let's say a Friday. And I think they got to, like, Ireland on a Thursday. They decided to spend a couple days in Ireland because Ireland is a big deal. And Derek has a very strong Irish lineage, which, he places a lot of value and identity in. And so while they were there, they see that there is an Irish music festival. There's an Irish music festival which has taken place, like, I don't remember the name of the town, but maybe an hour or so outside of Dublin. I think that was probably where they flew out of. And the type of community which they lived in, it's a big deal to change plans. Like everything is really, really well organized. And they wanted to extend their trip for like 2 days. And, it doesn't really pay a lot of money, I think, to live in these communities. So it's not like they've got a lot of disposable income, and then to change like their return time, like affected a whole bunch of people, and they take that very seriously. The whole community does. So when Derek and Emily decided to stay an extra 2 days for this Irish festival, music festival, it was it was a big undertaking. Like it wasn't yes, it was spontaneous, but it was spontaneous that required a lot of effort to do so. So they put a lot of intention into it. So they had to go out to this, they were able to do that. And so then they go, and I think they stayed at like an Airbnb, or maybe just like a traditional B&B. I don't know if they've got Airbnbs in Ireland. They probably do. But it was this tiny little house, and a little cottage somewhere, and they struck up a conversation with the owner of the house. And Emily she is also an art teacher at a Waldorf school, and is a relatively accomplished artist in her own way. And somehow that came out in the conversation with the owner of the cottage where they were staying, and they just really they explained why they're there, and their whole, they just got engaged, and how Ireland played a very important role in their engagement story, if you will. And so the lady, she tells Emily, she's like, well, I don't normally do this, but we've got this special connection. So I'd like to show you something. This is going to be my engagement gift to you. And the woman goes and tells the story that when she was growing up, one of her closest friends was the granddaughter of Pablo Picasso. And I don't know what the granddaughter's name, and I think it was like kind of like a complex relationship, for the granddaughter and having Pablo Picasso as the grandfather. But nonetheless, when her grandfather died, she inherited quite a collection of not only his drawings and sketchings, but then also, all of his friends. Like, he had within his own personal collection library, like, who he hung out with. I don't know any of the artists off the top of my head, but I'm imagining they were like, significant artists. I guess Picasso, I think he was alive around the 1920s. I think that was the time period. The granddaughter was given or inherited all of these drawings by Picasso and other like really well-known artists, and that granddaughter had such a strong relationship with the woman who owned the cottage, she gave her a bunch. And so this woman brings Emily, this student of art, this lover of art, into like her own private quarters of the cottage, and she's like, I want to show you these. And she opened up her own private collection and allowed her to go and see these incredibly rare, intimate works of art, which to Emily and to Derek, I would suppose to anyone, was like immensely meaningful and significant. So that's the first step. That's the first part of the story. So like that was the lead up. The next night was they were going to go to the Irish Music Festival. It was a traditional Irish music festival. And it wasn't just a traditional Irish music festival that was what was so significant or important, or the reason why they decided to stay a little bit longer. It was the fact that there was a very specific there's a very specific artist who was performing. And of all of the Irish music that they listened to, of all the Irish music which they listened to, this was the guy. This was the guy who was most significant to them. And if my memory is correct with the story, like the guy had like stopped performing. Maybe he's gotten older in years and what didn't perform very often. So it's kind of like a rarity that he would be performing. So that's the reason why they went through all of that hassle to be like, okay, we're going to rearrange everyone's schedules because we want to see this guy. So the next night is the night of the concert, and it was at an old church, and the whole church was kind of set up for a concert, and Derek and Emily were so like excited to go to see this that they were the first ones there. Maybe they arrived an hour, 2 hours before the show, and they're the only ones there. Except for maybe there was a woman who was going to take tickets. Like, I mean, these aren't, it's not like a huge 1,000-person arena who's coming to see this particular artist, but he's, from what I gathered from the story, is a artist of some note. You know, I'm not particularly knowledgeable about traditional Irish music. So anyway, so they told that woman the same story. The woman who was there, who was going to, I guess, like take the tickets or what have you, and the story of why Derek and Emily are there, about the significance of this artist in their relationship, and, you know, they just got engaged. Concert happens, and then at the very end of the concert, the artist, and I believe his name is Ilra O'Leonard. I'm really disappointed because I love to tell these stories, and I know it makes these stories, like, for you, the listener, like, even more rich, is like to be able to see the names, to see the pictures, so like it's not me just telling a story. And I wanted to be able to get the pictures from Emily and Derek, but I never got them, and I wasn't able to really get any information online because I wanted to get this video out, and I just haven't had access to the internet. So I apologize for that, because the story would be even more rich, in my opinion. But anyway, so going back to the concert, very end of the concert, and, you know, with concerts, the artist often talks to the audience, and he says, he's like, I understand there's a special couple here tonight. And he starts telling the audience the same story, Derek and Emily's story, which they relayed to the ticket lady because she apparently relayed it to him. And then he told that story on stage and then sang a song directly to them. He asked them to go and stand up in the whole place, like they applaud them, and he serenades them. Literally the guy who they fall in love listening to his music, and then on the weekend of their engagement, you know, which we did the whole Starboard session for, that guy comes and he serenades them and then invites them backstage to meet them personally. So that happened maybe 9 months ago, and like that was always one of my favorite stories. Like, you know, as someone who does a lot of these starboards, and I often get feedback from people like, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened, or this was meaningful, or something like that. Like, that was the one which like always like struck me dead center in you know, right in my heart space. So now, when we go back, we're going to watch this video again, the video of the orb, you know, the video of whatever this orb may be. Like, we saw the lens flares, and the timing of the lens flares seemed to point at something so much deeper than the lens flare themselves. Like, I would say the same thing is true with this. This is Derek and Emily's first dance. Listen to the, you know, not only are you to watch the video game again and the orb, but I want you to listen to the music. I believe it was a quartet of traditional Irish musicians, and how they found this band to play at their wedding was also a good story, but I'm not going to tell that story, so we're just going to watch the video again. All right. So that's story number 1. Now we're on to story number 2. So I've been here at Big Boy Farms. We've been here for a month now, and this past weekend, the entire property was rented out. Someone rented out the entire property, and they were holding a psilocybin retreat. And the psilocybin retreat was actually it was a veterans psilocybin retreat. And they were all veterans from the Army. And probably, if I were to guess, they're all men between the ages of probably 28 and 35. But they weren't just Army, your typical Army guy. I mean, these were what culture would call super achievers. I believe all but one went to West Point. And I think that of the West Point guys, almost all of them played a Division I sport. The only one who wasn't military, who wasn't a West Point, was a former NFL player. And in talking to the guys who are here, there's a lot of parallels between being in the military and being in the NFL, on an archetypical level. And so the retreat made sense that even though this guy wasn't necessarily a veteran, the ex-NFL guy, he still would relate with what the retreat's purpose was about. And the reason why he was there, because he was in Wharton Business School. If you're familiar with what that is, the business school of University of Pennsylvania, considered the finest business school. Ultra achievers in our culture. So it was this mixture of ex-military guys, getting ready to step out into the world with their freshly minted elite MBAs to do whatever it is they were to do. And it was a psilocybin retreat. So that, to me, struck me as it was very interesting, because in a certain way you would think that those two might be at odds with each other. And I do know that, psilocybin, ayahuasca, a lot of plant medicines are becoming more and more mainstream, and I think, if anything, there's a bit of a backlash, as, just in this sort of scenario where someone who would be seemingly stepping into or embodying all of the quote-unquote problem values of our culture are also partaking in these sacred sort of ceremonies, and are kind of missing the point. That's not what I'm here to talk about at all. I didn't get that impression, and it's not my job to judge someone's life. I enjoyed all of my interactions with each of the men that I got to talk to. They're extraordinary men. I mean, I'm just the host here. I wasn't part of the retreat, but it's a small campus, and we spent some time, they were here, I think, for 4 nights, and you get to know people. So anyway, this is where it gets really friggin' interesting. So as many of you, if you've listened to some of my past videos, I've made reference to the fact about my mother, prior to my birth in the 1960s, she was an administrative assistant for one of the Army doctor scientists that was leading, I don't know if leading, but the guys who were doing the experiments of the Edgewood Arsenal human experiments done on, the U.S. Army's Aberdeen Proving Grounds, where the experiments involved at least 254 chemicals, but mainly focused on mid-spectrum incapacitants such as LSD, THC derivatives, benzos. So there's this real kind of, this has been a topic which I've always found interesting. And Aberdeen is also, it's a major part of the Susquehanna mystery. This is where the first computer is, ENIAC was. So this has always been really, really rich in my personal history and my personal storytelling. So the fact that here we are at Big Boy Farms, and there's this army retreat where they're doing psilocybin, not exactly the same thing as LSD. Who knows? Like it says right here that there was 254 chemical substances. It doesn't say anything specifically about mushrooms, but there's a really harmonious reflection or synchronicity there. And then on top of that, as I indicated, I spent time talking to the gentlemen who were who organized it, the guys who were the organizers for the event. They brought in other specialists to facilitate the ceremonies, but the guys who organized it, he told me about I asked about the order of the ceremony, like what does the day look like, what is the procession of the event, and he said that there is an arrow ceremony, that's a big part of the lead up. And if you're familiar with the stuff I talk about the arrow and the arrow circulation, which a journey which we're on, and the arrow I have. So I go and I show him the arrow, and he asked if he could use that arrow in the ceremony. So, and I was like, yeah, I would be honored if you would use this in your ceremony. So this idea of like this reflection of me being my mother's son, who was the administrator of the doctors who were doing these, which turned out to be highly controversial experiments on enlisted army guys. Like here I am, 60 years later, 50 years later, and there's this reflection where these army veterans are utilizing plant medicine as a way to reintegrate with reality in life outside of the identity of being military. And so that to me was a rather spectacular synchronicity, coincidence that I have seen here since being in Big Boy Farms. And to make matters even more interesting, this is what's crazy, the event happened on their ceremony took place on Saturday night, which was June 8th, and it was my mother's 82nd birthday on June 9th. So, like, just the interweaving of all of this stuff is just, it's just kind of wild. Also interesting, I was talking to one of the participants afterwards, probably the one who I talked to the most, who I got to know the most. Turns out that he also used to work for the NSA. So this is the second ex-NSA person who's come to Big Boy Farms since I've been here. I think there's been, I don't know, maybe a total of 30 people who've come, and two of them, like, I happened to find out what their previous jobs were, and they happened to be, that agency, which I just made that video all about, the secret video. It's my opinion that the fact that both of these these ex-employees showed up is more synchronicity, more the interwovenness of the reality of life than me being checked up upon, but who knows. All right. Let me show you some pictures right now of Big Boy Farm. I think I showed you this before. This is like the Airbnb listing. If you're interested, Big Boy Farm is right here, about 2 hours from New York City, 90 minutes from Philadelphia, 90 minutes from Baltimore, maybe 2.5 hours from DC. This is where we're located. You can rent one cottage. Primarily what it is, these are the cottages. That's what you see behind me is one of the cottages. I think there are 8 cottages all said and done. If you're interested, come down just to stay, but we could also, you could book a starboard session. We could do some other sort of things. So for anyone who's interested, this here is, this is kind of more of an aerial shot. This was just taken today. This is the main farmhouse. This is a cottage. This is actually where I'm sitting right here, like right now. This is where I'm recording. This is the barn. This is a communal space. This here's a cottage. That's a cottage. This is what the barn looks like on the inside. There's communal kitchen. This is what it looks like on the deck of the barn. It's the more deck pictures, barn pictures. This here is what's called the Creekside Cottage. This is a little pier. This is it on the other side. This is the cottage. That's why it's called the Creekside. It's right by this creek. That's what it looks like. And then on top of the hill, as you can see, it's a 53-acre farm. There are no animals. There's a garden, but there's not like an active farm. On the top of the hill, we're on the bottom of, we're like in a hollow, which is why there's no internet service and why there's no phone service. But on the top of the hill is the most rustic of the cabins. This is the only one which is truly off-grid, no water, no electricity. We bring water up there. There's the outhouse. But you could see, like, this is like right in the Appalachian Mountains. The views are spectacular. Real special place. So where am I going right now? So we covered this. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Swedenborg. So today, I head into town. The closest town is called Kempton, and like right around here. And I had to mail something at the post office, and I was mailing a copy of the Rights of the 40th Parallel to Lisa, who is down in Mexico. And as I go to mail it, a local, this is a real rural. The closest town has 180 people in it, and that's 5 miles away. So one of the locals says to me, like, while I'm paying the post person, they're like, "Are you Susquehanna-Alchemy?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he saw my truck. On my truck, I've got like a decal that says Susquehanna-Alchemy. He didn't know what Susquehanna-Alchemy was. He was just intrigued by the name. He's like, "Well, what's that all about?" And I'm asked that a lot when I drive the truck around, like, well, what is Susquehanna-Alchemy? And like, that's a big question, particularly for someone who is like a normal person, So I don't ever really know how to answer that. I don't want to overwhelm someone. But I start, feeling my way through the answer, and the guy is seemingly like really interested. And we ended up talking for about 10 minutes. And then at the very end, he says to me, he's like, "Do you know Swedenborg?" And I kind of do. I know Swedenborg first, like, a very, very general reputation. Like, he's kind of like thought of as, the father of spiritualism. I think he was around in the 1700s. But this past March, when I was in, I had a house sitting gig in Chestnut Hill where I ran into Ross Ben. And then I then spent a morning with Alison McDowell. And Alison McDowell's work has been going really deep into Swedenborg. And right outside of Philadelphia, there is a Swedenborg cathedral, and there is a Swedenborg archive. And so she and I went to the Swedenborg archive. So I don't really know Swedenborg, but I had some touches with it. It was an interesting experience. Like, I didn't really have a firmer grasp as to like why Swedenborg would be significant. So anyway, so this guy goes and he says to me, he's like, "Do you know Swedenborg?" I'm like, "Yeah, kinda." And he's like, "Well, I'm in a Swedenborg church." I told him where I told him why I was in Kempton. I told him, like, we're the hosts of this Airbnb retreat, and I told him where it was, and he's like, "Well, right around the corner from where you are is my church, and it's a Swedenborg church, which is a very special or specific type of church, I guess, and I would love for you to come." And so I don't think I would probably I would probably go if it was just like a regular offer to go to someone's church, but considering the fact that I just ran into, like, 4 months ago, less than that, 3 months ago, I went to the Swedenborg archive with Alison McDowell. I think there's something there for me, so I'm excited to go there, maybe this Sunday, maybe the following, and I'll let you know who and what I discover. All right, so next piece of order is Berkley Springs, West Virginia, and Occoquan. So the June 21st and June 23rd, those are going to be the next River and Star ceremony. First at Berkley Springs, and the next one in Occoquan. Berkley Springs is in West Virginia, America's first spa town. If you can make it, come. Send me an email. You could camp there. You could stay at maybe in town. Definitely, you want to go and bathe in the Roman bathhouse. This is the Roman bathhouse. This is the spring house where you go into, like, the heated spring waters, and it's mineral baths. And we're going to be doing the River and Stars ceremony there. That's going to be on June 21st. I think that's wrong. I think it's the 23rd now. I'll have to verify the dates for Occoquan. But I talked a little bit about this in the previous video about the connection of Berkley Springs with the Arlington Institute, and there's just this overlap. I'm seeing it more and more between what you would call, like, let's say, the deep state, or at least what's positioned to us as the deep state, and this River and Stars ceremony. And now I'm seeing it also at Big Boy Farms with, like, the two guys who are coming from the Fort Meade Agency and the Army veteran psilocybin retreat. So it's just getting richer and richer. But the second one is Occoquan. This is where Berkley Springs is, right here. And Occoquan it's a river that goes into the Potomac, and then the Potomac dumps it into the Chesapeake Bay, which is, the Susquehanna River. And this is where we're going to be doing the River and Stars ceremony. Occoquan, let me blow this up right here. Christy made this flyer. Occoquan, where it's located, so this is where Occoquan is, historic Occoquan. This is the Occoquan River, and then this is the Potomac River. This is where they meet. And this is very, very close, right here. This is where the Occoquan Bay is. This is the Occoquan Bay. This is where Quantico is, Quantico, Virginia. This is the FBI headquarters. It's a major base for the Marines, and it's also the one of the original locations for the OSS. So before the CIA was the CIA, it was the OSS, and they had a handful of secret locations, and one of them was Occoquan, or Quantico, excuse me. So we see that, and another one was, let's see if I can see it right here, all right around here. This is where this area, no, I think it's closer to right here. This is where Camp David is, the presidential retreat. This is where I think it's Raven Rock, like the continuation of government, like underground, top secret fort. So I've been recording for 45 minutes. That's the first car that drove by. That'll give you an idea of like how remote this is. There's a road that goes through the middle of the farm, so like maybe one car every 45 minutes. But back to the point. So like right here is like major significance, like, you know, what you'd call deep state. Right around here is where you have the Greenbrier, which was, you know, known as where the Senate would go in the event during the Cold War, if there was ever like a nuclear event. And this is where Berkley Springs is. And so the point I'm trying to make is like how embedded these river and star ceremonies are with whatever like deep state is, whatever that represents. Like, I'm not caught up in any of the deep state narrative. That's not really my interest. So I'm familiar with those stories, and there's certainly an overlap. And the Occoquan one, which is so fascinating, is Occoquan is an Algonquin word, and it means at the end of the water. And there is, like within Lenni Lenape oral tradition, they say at the end of the water is where Great Spirit lives. So when you combine these two kind of like elements together, of like Occoquan meaning at the end of the water, and then where we find the Occoquan, this is where the Occoquan is. So, you know, this is the end of the water, and where this all meets into the Susquehanna River, and then this is also where we find all this deep state stuff. It's a really, I think, richly textured understanding of the type of experience which we're doing here. For the one at Occoquan, there's going to be a song circle. There's a woman, Sarah, who, when we lived at the River House last summer, she and Christy used to host song circles. And now Sarah has, she spent some time on a boat in the Caribbean, and now she's back in the Washington, D.C. area. So Christy and Sarah will also be doing a song circle as part of this river, as part of the river ceremony. And so that is what's going to be part of the, that's part of these events. So if you're interested, definitely come and send an email, reach out. You could support us this way. This is how you register. We'll give you all the details. It says June 28th, but I think we've changed the date. You could send me an email, and I can be more clear as to all of the details related to the River and Star ceremony. And then lastly, the final River and Star ceremonies, which are going to be at in Norfolk, Floyd, Virginia, and Asheville. Those are the last ones on the East Coast before we go out west. If you're interested, those dates are going to be July 13th and 14th when we're Floyd, and then in Asheville, and then also Norfolk. Anyone who's interested in coming and participating, reach out, and I will give you the details. So that's about it, my friends. That's the update. I hope to see you all. I have got a whole lot less access to responding, so if you reach out, it might take me a little bit longer than normal to respond, but yeah, I hope to be able to bridge this type of online connection to maybe something face-to-face at some time. So take good care. Until the next time, this is Mike Wong. Checking out.